Hi, and welcome to the lecture Teaching in English and Teaching of English. While English often functions as a common language in international context, the so-called lingua franca, it's widely used as a language of instruction at universities and colleges. The purpose of this lecture is to describe what teaching in and of English in higher education might look like, and to discuss the development of subject didactic knowledge among prospective English teachers. The status of English as a world language places high demands on university and college teachers and on prospective English teachers. Knowledge, awareness of the world around them, and flexibility are required for categories of teachers to be able to handle the language situation of today and the future. Well, focus in this lecture is on university and college teachers and their students, and on the effects of the increasing emphasis on English as a language of instruction. As a result of the Bologna process, there is an increasing exchange of students, especially between European countries, to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to follow courses and programs. Many of them are offered in English. However, teaching is usually done by teachers with expertise in their own discipline, but only sometimes with reasonable knowledge of English. This leads to many questions. What does it mean to teach in a language other than also one's own? What effects, positive and negative, can it have? And how is the student affected? Another focus is on the perspective of prospective English teachers. While English is used as a language of instruction in many subjects, prospective English teachers at our universities are trained in the university subject of English. These training programs include subject teachers who sometimes have subject didactic competence and didactics teachers who are subject didactic specialists. Here too, questions arise in connection with the spread of English. What does the increasing presence of English in the lives of children and young people mean for teaching in the classroom? What demands does the spread place on English teachers in the future? How can the education of English teachers be optimally shaped to give them solid conditions to handle their professional role? I will summarize some of the research conducted on English as a language of instruction in higher education from both the teacher perspective and student perspective. I will also provide a description on how the progression of subject didactic knowledge might look for prospective English teachers in the education. I follow students from A level and above in the up to C level in the university subject English. The basic idea of the lecture is to show how one could make visible the importance of both language knowledge and subjects where English is used as a language of instruction, and subject didactic knowledge in university subject where it can be common for teachers to lack theoretical knowledge or subject didactics. In the next part of this lecture, the second video, I will touch on the role of English as a lingua franca and what this fact entails in the form of various requirements, including with regard to subject didactic positions within the subject of English. And in the third video, the final part of this lecture, a short section concerns English as a skills subject, which also has special subject didactic consequences for prospective teachers. I will highlight the teaching of English in higher education and the training of prospective teachers of English based on theory and literature and our own experiences. I hope that the content will inspire a discussion about the importance of including these linguistic aspects in subject disciplines and what subject didactics for English is and means. Well, the situation is a bit special because English is like everyone's property. This is evident, among other things, through the enormous range of English in different forms that we come into contact with on a daily basis. The lecture, therefore, concludes by discussing a number of questions about what the position of English means for teaching in English and of English, as well as the importance of paying attention to the role of the language in different subject disciplines and the didactics of the English subject. So let's talk about English as a language of instruction. The Bologna process enabled student mobility of a previously unprecedented scale. A student from, for example, Germany can spend one or more semesters in Sweden, semesters of their studies in a country such as Sweden, and they can then count course credits towards a degree in their home country. According to the Swedish University Chancellor's Office in 2023, there were approximately 41,700 foreign students at Swedish universities and colleges in the academic year 22-23. The students come primarily from EU and EEA countries, but also from countries such as Australia, Brazil, Kenya, China, and the USA. International mobility is, of course, positive from many perspectives. New perspectives are introduced into seminar discussions, new knowledge is created, new contacts are made. At the same time, demands are placed on our higher education institutions to handle student groups where a majority have completely different first languages. The situation looks quite similar in the European countries that are part of the Bologna Agreement. In most cases, English has come to play an important role as a lingua franca. That's a language that's a second language for both parties, but is understood by all involved. English is thus used as a language of instruction in many universities and colleges by teachers whose first language is another language. On the one hand, a large number of students study their subjects in English, which for them means that they communicate in a foreign language. One result of this situation is that a new field of research has emerged around the effects of English as a language of instruction in higher education. Terms such as integration of content and language in higher education and the English medium programs are some of the terms used. The Netherlands have a long tradition of teaching in English at all levels. Wilkelson, for example, and he studied from 2005, conducted a qualitative study focusing on how the language of English language programs affects subject teaching. The study is based on a questionnaire answered by 29 teachers in 11 subject disciplines. The main findings were that language plays an important role, and the teachers in English language programs need preparation time. Furthermore, Wilkinson concluded that English as a language of instruction requires a different approach to teaching than in the mother tongue. As a university teacher, you have to adapt and change content and tasks according to the students' reactions during the course. The teachers in the study agreed that both they and the students had more difficulty expressing themselves in English than in their respective first languages. But they also believe that training in teaching methods would make teaching in English effective. Training in teaching methods rather than language training. In a Spanish observational study, they was known as Sanchancos, focused in their study on a number of lecturers at university level. Using a linguistic tool, systemic functional linguistics, and they found, among other things, that university lecturers became more accessible to students during their English language lectures. The personal pronoun we was used consistently in the interview responses, which the authors believe is a sign that the lecturers whose first language is Spanish adopt a collaborative tone and that they identify with their audience when using English as a language of instruction. The teachers create a democratic atmosphere in a way that is different from the lectures in Spanish. Also, the teachers are experts in subject areas other than language. They become aware that the content of the lecture must be conveyed in a more logical way than one might otherwise do. As a teacher, by using a second or foreign language, one becomes aware of subject perspectives that are often taken for granted when the communication is through a third language. The authors believe that the use of a second or foreign language as a language of instruction can act as a catalyst to balance the asymmetry between teachers and students. That's so common in Spanish context. The researchers also believe that the presence of non-native Spanish speakers in the group leads to a mutual linguistic support between students as well as between teachers and students. So Dreyfus, Nunes, and Senko believe that the study shows that the use of a second or foreign language in teaching leads to a reduction in the gap between teachers and students. In a Swedish study of teachers using English as a language of instruction, I interviewed a number of teachers on a course on teaching in English in higher education. In the first of 9 teams, so he made 9 teams. In the first of them, the majority of teachers had been asked to teach in English at the short calling, at short notice. Second, they lack a training. In the second, they lack a training in using English as a language of instruction. In the third team, they wanted time for preparation. The fourth team shows that the teachers felt they were going into the content with considerably less focus on detail than in the case when teaching in their first language. The fifth team shows that the teachers feel stiff and locked in, and the sixth team points out that the fluency the teachers normally feel in their teaching is missing when they use English. So the seventh theme shows that teachers avoid correcting students' English because they consider themselves to be too pro at English. All these themes point to difficulties and negative aspects of English as a language of instruction. The eighth theme shows, however, the teachers, despite everything, feel that there is very little difference between teaching in their first language and in English. So the ninth team shows that teachers gain self-confidence and feel secure in their teaching role once they have managed to use English in their teaching. The teaching situation includes, among others, teachers, students, and parents. Some studies pay attention to the students' perspectives. Moore and Jolie, for example, conducted a study in Spain. As an instrument, they used observations with multilingual student teachers at study subjects. They conclude that students have more cognitive uh, resources available to solve problems in interaction compared to cases when only one language is used. Moore and Dooley argue that the multilingual resources of participants come into their own in classroom interaction. The multilingual ability creates a positive climate for a range of activities that seem to enrich the collective learning process. The researchers also believe that the use of multiple languages within the same communicative situation can be an asset. Participants simply see their respective languages as colors on a palette. They use what is needed at the moment to clarify something. Smith, in his study from 2010, has studied multilingual students in an international hotel management program in Austria. Smith states that intake, so-called interactive explaining, is something that the students engage in. They collaborate and with the help of different language skills, they work together to come up with explanations of words and concepts. Smith calls this the principle of collaborative forces. Thus, just like Moore and Dolly, Smith sees multilingualism among students as something entirely positive. The studies mentioned provide positive picture of the effects of using a second or foreign language as the language of instruction. However, there are studies that are less positive. Penap, for example, in his study on 2011, observed university student in Germany and found that it's naive to believe that one learns both language and content when a second or foreign language is used in teaching. The study points out that many students avoid the courses and programs taught in English, and that students who participate in such courses and programs report problems with understanding the content. Söderlund shows in another study that Swedish university students understand a text written in Swedish much better than one written in English. The conclusion of these results is that students need access to both languages. Parallel linguistics is the solution that best promotes students' knowledge acquisition. So what I warmly recommend to all of you to apply. Parallel linguistics. As is evident from all these mentioned studies, there are major differences, major direction differences between research and study context. Dreyfus and Smith discuss precisely such differences in ICL-HE and EMPs. They state that reality and practice precede theory about how to teach and learn modern languages. To address this gap, Dreyfus and Smith propose a framework, so-called road mapping. Road mapping contains 6 components. Role of English considers the role of English in the specific context and in relation to other languages. Next component is academic disciplines. It shows that within an individual subject discipline, there is a specific language use that's necessary for everyone within that discipline to acquire. Next component is language management. It has to do with whether there is a language policy and how it's followed, if so. Agents is next component. Agents take into account the language use and actions of teachers, students, and administrators. The component practice and processes are based on how English is implemented as a language of instruction, whether it's done in a social constructivist way or according to some other theory, how teachers support students, and how language skills are integrated into subject teaching. The next component is called internationalization and globalization. So internationalization and globalization are about a complex interplay between the requirement to be internationally oriented and the necessity to meet local needs. Dreyfus and Smith hope that with road mapping, they can contribute to the advancement of research on English as a language of instruction in higher education, while taking into account the complex reality, complex and dynamic reality of teaching. In summary, the research results show that teaching English in non-English speaking contexts has positive and negative aspects. The positive aspects include that teachers have good contact with their students and that they grow in their professional role by using English. Students seem to have the opportunity to use their entire linguistic repertoire to solve problems that arise in the English classroom. In this way, students become good at studying, learning, and understanding the knowledge material. The negative aspects include that students are ill-equipped in lecture situations when they have to use a second or foreign language. Well, next part, uh, next video. This lecture is on English as a lingua franca. So let's go on to the next part.